Good morning. My name is Linda Best, and on behalf of the East Bay Broadband Consortium, I want to welcome you to our 5th annual summit. Our focus this morning, as I think you know, is on digital inclusion solutions and how that is so important in bridging the digital divide. The Consortium, as you know, is a collaborative group working on broadband development, deployment, adoption, and access. And we're really focusing today on the adoption and access piece of it. And I want to acknowledge Darian Louie, who's also on our steering committee with the East Bay Economic Development Alliance. And I believe Sandy Person will also be joining us from the Solano Economic Development Corporation, also a member of our steering. But also like to acknowledge James Nixon, our lead consultant, who has done all the heavy lifting with this summit. And thank you, James. This is terrific. And I also want to thank the California Public Utilities, which funds our efforts. I'm sorry? The CPUC does fund our efforts. We're very grateful to them. And also want to acknowledge and thank the KPOR Center for the financial support they have given us to make this summit possible. And now it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Sunny Wright McPeak. Sunny is the president and CEO of the California Emerging Technology Fund, which is working to bridge the digital divide, as you know. Now, you have a pretty extensive biography in your program, but I really do want to call out a few highlights. Sunny has an absolutely amazing career. She spent over 14 years on the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors, and I can speak to that because I walked precincts for Sunny in the first election. She also served as president and CEO of the Bay Area Council, and also served as Secretary for Business, Transportation, and Housing, the state's largest agency. Sunny exemplifies leadership in all its greatest forms. She knows how to get things done, and she gets things done, as you can see with the California Emerging Technology Fund. So please join me in welcoming Sunny Wright McPeak.
Oh, thank you, Linda, so much for that very, very lovely, generous introduction. I think I'm confined to this podium, am I, or is this detachable? No, it's detachable, Dan? Okay. I then will probably detach it. Okay. Because I hate standing behind a podium to engage in such a lovely coming together. I call it sort of a congregation. If there were wine, I would say it's communion. I don't think we're serving that yet this morning. But let me just say that this is the 5th annual summit of the East Bay Broadband Consortium, and my 4th. So at some point I got disinvited. I've now been invited back. And I really appreciate being here, and I always learn. So I'm going to be here the whole time to do that. I'm going to sort of try to, kick this off and talk about the solutions for digital inclusion. And note the terminology that's evolving is to the notion of inclusion as the solution to a divide that we've all recognized. And I will comment on 3 basic themes for you to reflect on as you're hearing the other speakers talk about best practices. Those are leadership. They are demand aggregation, smart city planning in the physical sense for deployment, and then integration of digital inclusion into every other strategy or solution for a major challenge we face. So just keep in mind, it's the whole notion of leadership. It is smart city or comprehensive planning, demand aggregation that goes with that, and third, integration into every other facet of our community life, our social engagement. So let me start with leadership. Linda and I go way back. She is an extraordinary leader. I hope you had the opportunity to hear her remarks when she was interviewed when we concluded a decade of work at the California Emerging Technology Fund. And it was just incredible to have a lifetime of partnership in Contra Costa County with Linda. What we have in East Bay Broadband Consortium is the base of civic engagement that came together. The leadership organizations, Darian Louis has headed up at least two incarnations of an organization that had the thrust to focus on economic prosperity. And always when you're talking about economic prosperity, we come right back to how are the people doing and how do we ensure that we've got a trained workforce, quality of life, and you can't talk about that without getting into digital inclusion these days. Linda had been at the Contra Costa Council, the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, and then in the East Bay to add Solano County, and Sandy, person will be here. So she has the three counties together. We've got civic leaders in the room, and you can't get anything done without that. In fact, I look around this room, and Linda, of course, acknowledged James Nixon, James and Joe Gross, who was a founding member of the California Emerging Technology Fund Board of Directors. He was part of the 12 who hired me, have worked together on actually economic investment in disadvantaged communities from an economic strategy. And James, thank you for pulling together this whole gathering and doing, again, the summit. Because the leadership that's required on all of these challenges means that we individually take responsibility to make something happen. So that's my definition of leadership. There are many others. I'm going to try to not be behind. You can still hear me, right? Okay, it feels much better to have a conversation if I'm not standing behind that podium. So think about that for a moment, because at the end of the day, what I know the East Bay Broadband Consortium would hope is that each of you, although you are obviously extraordinary leaders on your own, or you wouldn't have found yourself in this room at 8:30 or 9 a.m. When you have an already busy schedule, what we hope you will each do is think about what additional thing you can take responsibility for to make happen. And it's easy. You'll have a conversation at your workplace. You will interact with a colleague. You'll be on BART. You will see an opportunity to say, why don't we use technology? I hope you will also be a little bit impatient and adamant and demanding of everybody who's running for office in this season, because it's time everybody get off their duff and stop talking about it and actually do something. This is sort of an urgent situation as I would view it, and that's the same perspective I had 45 years ago working in healthcare at the corner of 3rd and Railroad in Pittsburgh, California, when Linda and I first met, and that was that we have too many silos, we have an increasing amount of poverty, and we don't get our act together in time to make a difference in the lives of people that we interact with today. So the state of the challenge for digital inclusion, or if you will, the state of the digital divide, is less today than it was 10 years ago. It was pretty damn big 10 years ago. Today, though, in the state that likes to pride itself in being the fount of innovation, we still have 31% of Californians either unconnected or underconnected. Let me repeat that. 31% of Californians are either unconnected, i.e. have no high-speed internet access at home. They might be able to do dial-up. You all remember that tone. If you can figure it out and have a modem. Or they're underconnected. So when I say the 31%, that's 13% are unconnected totally, and another 18% are what we call underconnected. They have a smartphone only. Now, those devices are marvelous. All of you can actually be multitasking. I hope you're doing that. If you're not, please tweet out something brilliant that I say. so that my bosses know that I'm doing something. You can literally be on vacation and still be connected to the office. You can navigate the internet. What you cannot do easily if you are a student is do your homework and do composition. You can't get keyboarding skills to take the tests that you're going to be judged on. If you are an adult, it's really tough to get workforce skills using a smartphone only, because that's not actually what all employers need you to be able to do. And if you can figure out how to do your resume and submit it successfully online with just the smartphone, they should hire you immediately. So please put that on your resume, that I don't have anything but a smartphone and I figured out how to get around your system. So that is why we are concerned about the underconnected. But 31% of Californians who are not fully engaged in the digital revolution, in the digital economy, or just basic democracy. You ever tried to get something from your local county or city or state lately? You must do it online. So we are actually leaving behind at an accelerating pace those who are not digitally included. That's why this summit becomes so urgent. Leadership, leadership. Thank you, Sandy. You were introduced. I know that it's really tough trying to get down 680 or 580 or 880. Okay, thank you. Sandy from Solano is here. So let me now talk about the other kinds of sort of best practices, because James wants you to think about this. Let me also say that the people who are not online are the most disadvantaged. So I told you, generally 31%, but let me just give you these statistics. And by the way, these are from 2017. We will be doing another statewide survey that'll be done in January. Got to get past an election season so people are not just traumatized by surveys, and then be able to feed this into the new legislature and the new administration. We'll release it in February. But through focus groups we've done since then and other follow-up surveys, these numbers still hold. So if you are Spanish-speaking, 25% of you are not online. If you are a person with disabilities, 25% of you are not online. If you are over 65, a good many of us don't like to admit it, but 31% of us are not online. If you don't have a high school diploma, then an even higher percentage, 33%, are not online. So the most disadvantaged are the ones who are not online. It's an interesting dynamic that the demographic that is between 70 and 85 are getting online pretty rapidly, because it is the way we all stay in our home longer if you've got a serious medical problem and can be monitored remotely instead of being in a facility. So in terms of what do we do here in this room and in this region, let me talk about the smart city planning, physical environment for just a moment. Mike Dozier, thank you for being here. He headed up the San Joaquin Valley, the partnership for the San Joaquin Valley for a number of years, which became the umbrella for the San Joaquin Valley Consortium. Mike actually knows California very well, has been a leader in economic development. He joined Beacon. Congratulations that you recruited him. So that's terrific that you're here, Mike. So while the largest problems in terms of connectivity is in the rural area, when it was like 3 or 4 summits ago, and Steve Blum had done the analysis on the connectivity speeds, right? The grade was a C, an average of a C across the region. Anybody in this room who's satisfied with a C, just, go home. Or take some donuts on your way out, or whatever we have as lovely refreshments, but you need not be here. Here is the deal on deployment. It actually has to make economic sense or be subsidized. So in a good sense, we've all come together. We have a little bit of money, a little bit more that we got into the California Advanced Services Fund. In urban areas, however, where the real pressure point is in planning and aggregating demand. So in the East Bay with 3 counties, and there has to be something over, 35 cities, those jurisdictions should be looking at how do we actually plan for deployment? Where do we want to be in the rights of way? Go to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and say the next time that you are doing planning for investing the billions of dollars in what should be mobility as the outcome, please consider how you're going to accommodate and facilitate broadband. When I was secretary at BT&H, Business Transportation Housing, and had Caltrans and interacted with the Transportation Commission, I would tell everybody the best trip is a virtual trip. If I can unload a trip from the system, that relieves congestion and it reduces impact on the environment. So please look at how you can actually aggregate demand. And then if the planners and the public works directors start talking to at least 5 other folks in departments that have contracts for IT with some of our best friends in the broadband world, you could aggregate demand and say, we shall not do business with you unless you're upgraded. I mean, just plain old, can we actually get our act together and aggregate demand? You'll hear from Tony in San Leandro, who's done that very well. You're going to hear about the pilot project, other smart cities. Listen to that. Now, here's where in the urban area we also, I think, need to concentrate, and that is, how do we get more people online? And I rack my brain about how almost daily, how are we going to get to the 13% who are offline, that's 5 million people. The 18% who have a smartphone only, that's 7 million more people. So 13 million people, how are we actually going to reach them? And they tend to be lower income, disadvantaged in many ways, but low income. Well, we need to go where a lot of low-income people interact with the existing bureaucracy. So that third best practice is integrating digital inclusion into every strategy that you have. You will hear today about workforce training. You'll hear from Tech Exchange that started out to be OTX West. Bruce, thank you for founding it. Thank you, Seth, for taking the helm, being our partner in school to home that we want to do more of, Dan, in the East Bay. There is this model that is actually Bruce started of a very comprehensive ecosystem of refurbishing, doing workforce training in the process, and then getting devices out to people. And in the meantime, being in schools, being where there are a lot of people who need devices, and training them to get online. But think about it, in our schools and people in public schools in California, we have 3 million kids who go to schools in low-income neighborhoods, and most of them do not have devices at home, are not online at home. The schools don't buy enough devices, they're still buying textbooks, and are not fully engaging parents to be online, even though our local control funding formula imperative says engage parents. If parents don't speak the same language as is dominant in the school or with the teachers, if they're intimidated by that school site, if they don't know how to navigate the portal to check on student homework or grades, those parents are not going to be able to hold accountable the school. I want to hasten to say I work in some of the most difficult neighborhoods throughout California, in the poorest neighborhoods, and I am just incredibly impressed with the dedication of educators in public schools today. So it is not for a lack of really good teachers or good principals in these schools. It is that we haven't figured out how to collectively provide the right structure to support the learning that needs to take place of all of our teachers, get professional learning, for them to be able to incorporate the technology into their lessons, and for the parents to have devices that their kids take home and know how to use, not only to support their kids' learning, but how to also be engaged in the accountability of how the kids get their homework in and what their grades are. Unbelievable what kind of change in attitude happens when kids know their parents actually can check that stuff. And it is such a transforming dynamic with those schools when parents are engaged and online, and language is no longer a barrier. So in the 3 counties, there are 45 or so school districts. Do not stop until every one of them is actually doing the kind of program I just described. We happen to call it school to home, but it can be called anything you want. It has to be comprehensive, not just dropping technology into the laps of students and not training the principals, not training the teachers, not engaging the parents. That is not going to help. But if you do a comprehensive program, then we permanently close the digital divide for all of those families who have kids in public school. So please take that on. A couple of years ago when I was here, I think it was actually the 4th summit, I was stopped going out by Ann Spalding, who has been active in the East Bay Broadband Consortium and a volunteer with Tech Exchange. And she said, "Do you have anything for me to do?" And nobody should offer to volunteer for me. I called her the next morning, and here's what Ann did, but I'm going to give you the punchline. I said, I really need to get every agency in Contra Costa County and then start working in Alameda County. Haven't gotten to Solano, but this is what needs to be done. We want the Social Services Department to inform every one of their clients about the affordable broadband offers that exist in the region. Everybody who is on Medi-Cal or Covered California should know. Everyone who's going through workforce training should know. Every school district should distribute that information. We entered into agreements with 39 institutions, agency, public departments, a couple of big nonprofits like La Clinica. Jane Garcia was wonderful in doing that, and said, so distribute this information and tell the families that these offers exist. They're $10, $15 a month. They're going to start expiring. We worked really hard to get those requirements imposed on those companies when they were going through corporate mergers. And guess what? All of those agencies understood it was important for their clients to be online. All of them realized if they could communicate with their clients online, that would save them money, paper, would save time. People didn't have to come into the office and usually generate more greenhouse gas emissions into the environment. And none of them could get out of their own shadow to actually do it proactively. They all distributed the information. We have some tracking that we can sort of gauge how many people actually signed on, but it's not a full, deep, and abiding commitment to digital inclusion. So a next summit should have all of the public agency departments here saying, what are you doing to get your most disadvantaged clients online? And that is something you should be asking everyone that you interact with. Okay, so let me just tell you that there's workforce training, there is social services, it's healthcare, it is education that we need to incorporate digital inclusion into. If you're doing economic development, please do mixed use, mixed income, and make them smart communities so that everyone to begin with is online. If you are thinking about how we're going to have a trained workforce, I see a lot of business people here. Elliot, you're here again. Thank you very much. It is just impossible to get a trained workforce, even in this region that has the highest digital adoption going. The skills most lacking across the state in every region, yes, there's so-called soft skills for being workforce prepared, but then it is digital skills, called ICT, information and communication technology skills. It's missing. So every workforce development program needs to incorporate digital inclusion. Okay, in conclusion, you will hear today from Olivia Cueva, who is with the David Glover Center. Let me just, where's Olivia? I've not met. Okay, Olivia. You might even be guessing what I'm going to be saying. So let's go back to leadership. Nothing happens without visionaries who then follow through, make something happen, take personal responsibility. And David with Occur was one of our early partners, grantee partners, as was Tech Exchange or OTX West. And here's what David said that was so brilliant at our first grantee learning community. The economic divide, or excuse me, the digital divide is just another manifestation of the economic divide. Technology is just a tool. It's not even my first love. You know, I started out in healthcare, and then I had to figure out how to do other things like let's grow the economy so we can pay for healthcare. And then, you know, you learn along the way, you got to do education and got to train people. It's actually a pretty interesting ecosystem that has to come together, not siloed, but actually focus on the people we're trying to help. And so if the digital divide is just another manifestation of the economic divide, then we need to have digital inclusion in every facet of our strategies. That is why you've joined us. We continue to have our Internet for All Now campaign. Some of you will recognize this, if you haven't seen them before, as a really good church fan. Church fan, everybody knows church fans. I'll come back to my spiritual dimension about leadership. Okay, these are so good. They are union made, and they're very lightweight, and they're hard to destroy, and they send a message. If you're in any room delivering testimony, and anyone has ever been in a church that has good gospel music, they will get the message, and it's a way to reinforce what you are saying. We say Internet for All Now. You helped us pass legislation last year. It was barely acceptable to us. It's sort of our bill got hijacked. We've got to do a lot more work in the legislature and implementing at the PUC. I want to say, if anyone is here from the California Public Utilities Commission, the PUC is really trying to do a good job of dealing with a lousy piece of legislation. And what we did get is a digital adoption, an adoption account. So that's going to continue to grow. It was a small amount to begin with, but there's hope on the horizon. Hope on the horizon that there will be funding to sustain your work. And there's $10 million more for regional consortia. So that's what is the good news. You actually have to continue the work. You don't get to declare victory when this grant is over from the PUC. You have to have a really aggressive agenda and continue to provide that focus, that beacon for everyone in this room and around you. It is imperative to have Internet for All now. I am introducing Seth. Now I remember the program. See, there is a problem when you step away from the podium because then you don't have in front of you your notes. It is my honor, and I've referenced the vision that Bruce had with OTX West being a pioneer and the whole refurbishing. And you know, there were times, I know, Bruce, when you were paying people out of your own pocket. And then Bruce decided to retire, and there was a very wide search that was done to recruit Seth Hubert. And Seth comes to Tech Exchange as a teacher. He was in Teach for America. We have I think, a very, very vital partnership between Tech Exchange and the California Emerging Technology Fund, and Seth actually is also our program manager in the city of San Jose for 2 of our school-to-home programs, because it was just a lovely fit and has really gotten those efforts off the ground. And we have a current a grant agreement to help support and sustain, build upon what Long Foundation did to make a big investment in Tech Exchange and to make sure all of that work continues. And it is a contract for 960 adoptions. And through the end of December of this year. And if any of you have ever tried to actually sign up low-income people for an offer, first of all, you have to do outreach in language and in culture, and then you have to explain the relevance. Why should we make this choice to actually pay for broadband as opposed to maybe a little bit more groceries? what difference is it going to make to you, your children, et cetera? And then you have to navigate whatever is the bureaucracy of the company that you're trying to sign up with. And sometimes you're put on hold. Sometimes they tell you wrong information. It is not easy to do. So as of the end of September, Seth reported to us out of his 960 adoptions, they have accomplished 700. And in our book, that is performance. Ladies and gentlemen, Seth Hubert.
Thank you so much, Sunny. Lovely introduction. I need to reflect back that I have such an appreciation for Sunny and her leadership. I have such an appreciation for CETF and what they're doing statewide to really lead the way in making sure that we are closing that digital divide. Some of the statistics that she threw out that I want to build on, 10 years ago, the state was at 55% internet adoption. So there was a lot of families that weren't connected online. And that was CETF's charter of how do we move that needle. And in the 10 years since, we're up to 87%, which is just remarkable. So thank you, Sunny. The other thing I really appreciate about Sunny, though, is she knows that the work is not done. The last leg of our journey is going to be the toughest because it's with the most disconnected families, right? Also want to really express appreciation for the consortia. Thanks for the partnership with Tech Exchange personally, but also for calling together groups of people like this in such a atmosphere where we're going to learn together, we're going to get inspired together, and then we're going to get back to our desk this afternoon and get to work and figuring out how we can all contribute to this issue. Did want to mention that we are very digitally astute at this summit today. We are live on Facebook right now, is my understanding. So please discreetly pull out your device and get that shared out to your network so people can join in. All right. Before I launch into sharing a little bit of Tech Exchange's work, our approach, where we're at, wanted to set a bit of context for what the progression of the morning is going to look like. In a moment, I'm going to be joined by 5 other amazing people that are in this space doing important work. And we're going to do a hybrid of presentations. So each one of us is going to share our work, give some updates, do a bit of slide decks. But we're also, throughout the presentations, going to pause and do some panel conversations so that we can weave in and out of sharing information and then also collaboratively discussing what's our approach, what's needed, all of that. So before I launch, if I could go ahead and have the presenters join. I'm not going to do lengthy introductions. You do have in your agenda there bios of each one of the folks that's going to be sharing their work. So please read through that and really get a good understanding of who they are. But if I could have Olivia Cueva, Don Curtis, Kirsten Lundgren, Derek Lee, and Tony Batala join up on stage. And we'll get the morning kicked off. Thank you. Why don't you join on that? You could join. Very good. So transitioning, I'll get things kicked off by talking about Tech Exchange and where we're at. So if I could get the slide deck around Tech Exchange's work up. Very good. And do I have a click here, right? Okay. Also building on what Sunny was saying about there are so many aspects that technology touches. As we are progressing as a society, you can't do any of these things without interfacing with the internet, without interfacing with a computer. So, if you're a parent and you have a child, they need to get on their Google Drive. They need to check in on Khan Academy and watch that video. As a parent, I need to log into my student's portal and see how they're doing. On the healthcare side, I have a portal that I can check in with my doctor, communicate. employment, if you are trying to apply for a job, you need to create a resume, you need to do a job search, you need to apply for that job. That's all online. Finances, you can do banking and checking in against progress with some different apps to make sure that you're financially secure and you're meeting goals, and try to log into any public services. You need to make sure that skip that DMV line, you can go right online and get your things done. So I want us to all pause for a moment. It's a very obvious statement, but technology is really embedded in everything that we do, right? So just think about our daily activities. We need computers, we need internet. But I want to lead with some stark statistics, that we have 500,000 people here in the East Bay that don't have internet, and it is directly affecting the people that are most vulnerable. We have 42% of our low-income families that don't have computers at home. So there's just this huge divide that oftentimes isn't talked about enough as an issue in our region, in our communities, because for many of us, we are on the opposite end where we're juggling the proliferation of technology. There's 5.7 is the average number of devices that Americans have at home. So with our children, with our jobs, with our home, we are all dealing with an abundance of technology, while folks on the other side of that divide deal with not being able to engage with any of those online activities that we had just discussed. So that's my first message, is that we have a problem as a community that we need to really rally behind and solve collaboratively. So Tech Exchange is making some strides to addressing this. And rather than me frontally talking about it too much, I wanted to transition and show a video that gives a good summary around who are we at Tech Exchange and what kind of work that we do.
We're at an interesting time in Oakland where technology is bringing in new types of companies and new types of jobs and new types of opportunities.
We have all these amazing tech companies, but yet there's a huge deficit in under-resourced communities not having technology.
It's hard for me as a single mother to get an expensive computer because right now the cost of living in the Bay is really, really high. And it's either you pay rent or you get a computer for your kid.
I have a son who actually is into graphic designs. My other son wants to do programming. So the technology is really important to them. There are a lot of parents who actually have really good kids who are trying to really learn and go far, but we simply cannot afford the technology. The Tech Exchange makes that possible.
Tech Exchange's mission is to make sure that everyone has a computer, has internet, and the basic skills to use it. We have a truck that's routed all throughout Northern California to pick up equipment. As we bring that back into the warehouse, we have volunteers and interns and staff that is triaging and assessing all of the electronics that we've picked up. We then have technicians get those machines fully prepped to get into families' homes.
We're giving your computers an extra life, and we're making your computer more than something that sits on a desk. We're helping a family, we're helping a kid graduate and go to college.
We provide access to the technology through what we call tech fairs, where we take the equipment to a school, provide a digital literacy workshop, and provide the equipment for families. Oftentimes in those events, it's a first time they're getting the computer. So there's a lot of education that goes into getting the computer, talking about the internet.
We'll teach them things like logging into your computer, opening up your browser, accessing your student's portal for education.
You know, it's great to share a website with a high school student that teaches him something or is able to accomplish his homework. It's a very rewarding thing.
For us, it's providing a safe space for them, but also having them believe in us.
They're like family. You don't feel like intimidated on going and asking them any questions. They try to find a way to help you. Tech Exchange is awesome. People should know more about them.
We're not only providing a computer, we're not only providing digital literacy, we're not only providing internet, we're providing the entire systematic wraparound services. You have all the factors in order to succeed, not one piece or the other.
47% of our low-income youth don't have a computer at home. If we can make sure that there is equitable access to technology, then the potential that is within our youth in Oakland will be fully realized by the tech industry that is starting to boom.
So I want to recognize our founder, Bruce Buckaloo, who formed this model in 1994 when I don't think digital inclusion was a word. Digital divide was something that was not on anybody's radar at that point. And he had this combination of getting internet into people's homes, getting computers into people's homes by refurbishing them from companies and then helping them with the training to support them all the way. So all of those pieces lumped together was formed in 1994, and we've been growing ever since. So thank you, Bruce, for the model that we get to all build on. So a big component to our program is taking computers from one location and getting them to those that don't have. And so we're attempting to solve the digital divide problem, but also address another problem in our communities around the quick and evolving pace that we're replacing computers in our workplaces. And so each day, 150,000 computers are discarded by Americans. They go to e-waste, they are recycled. That has huge environmental repercussions. There's a lot of energy that goes into making a laptop. 10 tons of material waste go into making a laptop. A lot of the water that needs to process the machines. Like, we need to treat these things as holy and get every last drop of use out of them from just an environmental standpoint. So that's the input to our model, is we work with, at this point, nearly 70 partners that we go and we pick up their computers after their employees have surplus to them. We bring them back to our shop, and then we have youth interns that we involve in part of our program to learn hardware skills, swap out memory, erase hard drives, and get those machines prepped in order to get them back out to the community. And I don't want you to think that these are dusty, dingy, old computers that we're getting back out into the community. These are high-quality corporate computers that were purchased the best of the best when they were first put into the company's hands. And then we put on a cloud-ready software onto them, so they're just a direct portal to the internet. So they don't require much physical resources from the computer. We can take an aging computer of 3, 4, 5 years, and it is the perfect solution for a family that's looking to get online for the first time. So our solution that we've developed in partnership with East Bay Broadband Consortium is the digital inclusion solution. And you can think of it as a starter pack for families that are not digitally connected. And so we help them with the internet sign up. We provide them the free refurbished computer. We help them with wherever they're at with the digital skills that they need to develop. And then we offer a backdrop of tech support. So we're a trusted org that if you have any problems, come to us and we'll help solve whatever you're bumping up against. And the way we deliver that, we have a differentiated approach. So the tech fairs are massive in scale. We attract 300 plus people at a time. We generally do those with partners like public libraries, and we help deliver computers. We help give workshops to people about online resources. We do internet signups on the spot. And then tech nights, we work with schools. We do smaller events of like 30 to 50 families. We help them with what tools they need for their classroom. Tech trainings, we do a lot of that with public housing sites, and those are very intimate, maybe 10 people at a time, progressing through a module and series of trainings to really develop their tech skills. And then lastly, we have a location-based approach. We have a tech hub where people throughout the region can come to us and utilize a computer lab, get help with internet sign up, get a computer from us, whatever they're in need of. It's been successful. So in the last several years, we've reached 10,000 homes here across the East Bay. The map demonstrates our work in Oakland, not meant to be super legible from your distance in the crowd, but I want you more to just feel it. Each one of those dots is a family that's been served with the digital inclusion solution. And we can claim that we nearly have a Tech Exchange computer on every block in Oakland. Several years ago, we started expanding our services throughout the East Bay. So the map on top shows Pittsburgh and Antioch, and we're starting to do great partnership work, especially with the school districts there. We also are starting to gain roots in Richmond and throughout Alameda County and San Leandro, San Lorenzo, Hayward. So we're in a quick growth phase. We've grown 400% in the last 3 years. and we're continuing on that trajectory. I wanted to touch on the environmental piece again, and the line that I want to call out is by repurposing these computers, the cost that we save the environment is very near equal to the cost of our operating budget. So I want you to think about that as a dollar that comes into Tech Exchange saves the environment by that same dollar, and a byproduct is we get to connect all of these digitally unconnected people. So I think it's a very, very powerful model that has multiple points that it's helping our community. The work is far from done. We have a lot of people here in the Bay Area that are still not connected. California, the US, so we need a lot of energy. We need people from all walks of life to take this on as a mission and really start a movement of how are we ensuring everyone's online. So that's what I want to leave you with from Tech Exchange's end. We're in need of tech, time, and money. So if you could talk to your employer, what are you doing with your corporate technology? What are you doing with your public technology? Send it our way. I can't think of a better way to repurpose it. Time, we need volunteers. We need help in our warehouse. We need help at our events. So plug in and donate your time. And lastly, it takes funding to make all of this work. So think about contributing individually or really try to point people in our direction because there's more work than we have capacity to do. We're growing as fast as we can with all of the input that we get. So thank you very much. All right. I'm very excited to be followed by Olivia Cueva from the Glover Center, who's going to share about their fabulous work. So come on up, Olivia.
All right, thank you so much, Seth. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Olivia Cueva, and I am the director of the David E. Glover Education and Technology Center in East Oakland. And I'm gonna start my talk today talking about my friend, Gary King Jr. Gary and I were friends in high school, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a pretty big crush on him. So much so that when I found out that he painted houses on the weekend as a part-time job, I somehow convinced my parents to hire him and pay him to paint my room that all of a sudden needed to be painted. So here is a photo of Gary painting my room. But a couple years after this photo was taken in 2007, Gary was shot and killed by an Oakland police officer. He was mistaken as a suspect by a police officer with violent offenses in his past. I marched with family and friends outside of Oakland City Hall, but as we know, justice was never served. We're used to that. A beautiful mural was painted underneath the BART tracks in North Oakland, 54th Street and MLK. And it was this beautiful, beautiful testament that lit up this very busy street. And I would drive by it all the time and, it'd put a little smile on my face to remember my friend. But a couple years later, after that, BART buffed the mural. So ever since then, I was, trying to figure out a way to put something back in that location to honor my friend. So this is what the mural looked like in 2007 when it was first put up. And this is what it looked like 10 years later, 2017, and what it looks like today. So as you can see, there's nothing there. It was completely painted over. And so I'm not a guerrilla artist. I'm not someone who could go in the night. I'm not a muralist and put the mural back. But I did go to school for creative technology and interactive design. And I learned how to use a program called Unity, which is a video game design software, and used how to work with a technology called augmented reality. Does anyone know what augmented reality is? Is anyone familiar? Okay, I see some hands. So if you guys don't know, off top, you guys are probably familiar with it. So it is what is in your Snapchat or your Instagram filters, also the really famous game Pokemon Go. So what augmented reality really is layering a digital image on top of reality. And so I created an app that could put the mural back in its original location using AR, augmented reality. And so here is a video of the first prototype. I released it on the 10-year anniversary of his death. So I created this project, as a way to pay tribute to my friend, but also as a way to show my community how we actually can use these new emerging technology tools to tell our own stories, to preserve our stories, and also really create the world that we want to see. And so that brings me to my work now, working at the David E. Glover Center, a project of Occur, where we have an emerging technology program for youth where we do everything from video game design to virtual reality, robotics, artificial intelligence, a whole design program, learning animation and graphic design on Adobe. And, I encourage my students, before they even come in and start working with the technology is how can we use these tools as ways to improve things that maybe need to be for issues that we see in our lives, in our personal lives, in our families, and in our communities. And so how can we use these tools to redesign or influence those in some way? But that's not all that we do. We also have a program for older adults and seniors to learn the very basics of computers. So we have students who come in who have never touched a computer before, who are just learning for the first time how to turn on a computer, how to use the keyboard, how to type, how to use Microsoft Word, how to copy and paste. And we still, this is still a huge need in the community that we're in. And so I'm very happy that we're able to still offer these classes. Our founder, David E. Glover, started the center in the mid-90s when he saw that his community did not have the same access to job and skill preparation in technology that people just right across the side of the bay were going to have. So that's why he opened the center, and so I'm very proud that we are still offering these classes. And in the spirit of David and in following the mission, what we're kind of building and moving towards now is really a space of communal innovation where we have folks from the younger generation and the older generation working together to use and work with these emerging technologies, teaching each other, learning from one another, and really figuring out ways that we can use design and technology to create things that we need and we want to see in our own communities. So with that, I just want to say thank you. If you want to check us out, please visit our website, degetc.org. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Glover Center, so please follow us. If you're interested in investing or donating, supporting our program, I did put a link up there, but really, if you're interested in supporting or getting involved anyway, please reach out. We have a table over here where you can join our mailing list and find out more about our programs. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thanks for all the important work that you do, Olivia. And next up, we have Don Curtis, who's going to talk about the mobile lab that he provides training out of the community. So Don.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes? So, there you go. Let's see now. About 15 years ago, first off, I should back up. The program I work with is Oakland Adult and Career Education. It's part of Oakland Unified. And about 15 years ago, previous director had this idea of classes to communities throughout Oakland. We were debating on how to get students to the classes that we physically had in buildings, and we weren't getting the enrollment. So this director said, well, maybe let's get an RV and transform that into a classroom. And so he was the driving force behind that idea. There were two people apparently that tried driving it and then teaching in it before I was asked. They lasted, I think, a month each or something like that. I mean, driving it is a big, big challenge, especially in the streets in Oakland. So as it's evolved over the years, I now have, or I offer at 3 school sites, and how they're chosen is they typically approach us to see if the service is available, and then we make the decision based on the number of parents that they can enroll ahead of time before we actually go to that campus. What's exciting about this for me is that, I work with these parents for about 100 hours, 120 hours at each school. So that's a lot of instructional time and a lot of, how should I put it, just, a lot of time to work with these parents. I don't work with the kids, but sometimes the parents and their children will come in the bus and work on some projects together, which is really a great incentive for the parents to be in that classroom. Here. How is it? How do I forward that? So there's a picture of the bus, and some of my students, I think that was taken at Madison Elementary, East Oakland. It's 35 foot long. The classes are technology based, but I also do some ESL and basic skills as well, depending on the group of students that come in. I don't know if I mentioned, but the classes are 2.5 hours each, one afternoon, one morning class. I can only fit about 12 students in each session, comfortably. I've had up to 20, but that was pushing it. There was very little room. People were sitting on stools and sharing laptops, so it was challenging. But now 12 is the max. The students that I get, they come from all over. In the photo there, you probably see students from Yemen, Honduras, Mexico, and maybe Eritrea. So they are from all different walks of life and all different countries. Language definitely is a problem when giving this instruction. So I speak Spanish and some French, but and I was trying to learn some Arabic with the Yemeni students that I was working with, but that took a little bit of time. I could communicate basics, so teaching pretty like terminology was difficult. So speaking about digital literacy and to distinguish it from computer literacy, digital literacy is quite different. It is critical for learning in life, and the work that I do is to prepare those students with the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to improve social and economic opportunities. Again, I have to say that if their level of education from their home countries is 6th grade, there has to be some foundational instruction before jumping into the tech instruction. So I do a needs assessment and a language assessment before each session to find out, first of all, English level and then also their tech skills. Once they're in the class and they're comfortable and they start building a community within that classroom, they're able to work really well together and share experiences, not just learning experiences, but experiences on how they got to the United States, what's happening with their kids in school, how to, sharing of homework strategies, things like that. So in that picture, we have a student using one of the tablets that I have in the class, and she's working with 2 young people, and they're reading a story on that tablet together. They're not her kids, they're just kids that came from one of the grades. I think it was New Highland Elementary, that school. And then I think the woman on the right is working with her daughter. So what is really key, and I've gotten a better understanding of this over the years, is the concept of digital wellness and how children are using technology and the amount of time they're spending in front of a screen. And I think I saw a statistic somewhere where it's within the last decade, it's up 2.5 hours a day, something like that. So that's of concern. And part of the instruction I give is to have discussions with parents on what their kids are doing at home with their tablets or their phones or their laptops or computers, the types of things the kids are doing, how the parents are monitoring what the children are doing. And it's pretty interesting. I've seen many times a mom, when a child is upset or misbehaving, they'll pass over the phone to be the pacifier, to be the babysitter. And for me, that's alarming. I mean, that should not be the way to solve that problem. Working in Oakland, I have definitely seen firsthand the inequities within certain communities. I'm typically east of 23rd Avenue all the way to the San Leandro border at schools, and West Oakland as well. West Oakland Middle School and MLK are a couple of schools that I've taught at. And there definitely is a need for the types of services that Seth offers. There's definitely need for instruction for the parents. It's really important. I mean, a lot of those parents are not understanding what their children are doing in school, and they don't get a sense of the homework. With that 6th grade education, there's a barrier to being able to sit down at a table and help their children with homework. Parents may be working 2-3 jobs, so they're not available to help with homework. So for parents to understand the technology and to understand what their kids are using or doing with that technology at the school and then hopefully in the home is key, and that's a big part of my job as well. So as Seth was mentioning, Tech Exchange is a big resource in Oakland. Domingo Vasquez, he's a member of Tech Exchange. He typically comes out once or twice when I'm at a particular school site to give a workshop to parents and then offer them the free computers that Digital Exchange gives out. So then after his workshop, he signs them up and then they go for a Saturday distribution wherever their warehouse is. And the picture on the left is a picture of his family. I worked with the mom, and then the whole family went out to get the computer. It became a family event. So pretty exciting. And as you can see, I think, Seth, is that where they're loading someone's car? Yeah. Yeah. So families will go to the distribution day, and staff will help and load the cars. So the one thing I also, if I remember correctly, is there a 1-year warranty on the hardware? That's right. And software is already installed, right? So also through Tech Exchange and some other resources, I've heard about the Comcast and AT&T offering $10 a month internet. My families have had varied experience with those services. They've sometimes complained it's a little slow, possibly because many devices are connected to that one internet connection. And then the 1 million project where Sprint is giving out phones to high school students, another great idea. But as was mentioned before, I mean, kids need more than just a cell phone to do the work that's required at school. So this is where this is what I wanted to talk about the most, is the instruction. If we are going to, at some point, be able to offer more classes to parents, because I'm focusing on the parents, the instruction needs to be quality. It has to be engaging and differentiated, needs-based, data-driven, research and evidence-based. There's an organization, EBBC. They have an excellent set of standards for educators and students. I highly recommend it. And where are the classes? At adult schools, such as mine, community colleges, libraries, organizations like David E. Glover, nonprofits, probably other places that I don't know about. But I would also like to see just a general depot where people would be able to access either a website or a phone number or an app to find out where classes are for adults. And I think we do need more classes for parents. Right now in Oakland, there just aren't enough. So, all right. So vision for the future will be your turn to be thinking about that. And thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Don, for the overview of your very important work. We started the conversation with organizations and efforts that are really linked to digital inclusion, internet, computers, and training. We now want to place that within a broader ecosystem around how are we getting youth engaged in technology with a pathway towards industry? How are we developing smart cities and smart regions to really make digital inclusion fit into the larger innovation happening with our region? So to get that piece of the conversation kicked off, I'd invite Kristen Lundgren, who is doing amazing work at Tech Hire in Oakland. So come on up, Kristen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten Lundgren, and I'm leading Tech Hire Oakland based out of the Kapor Center Innovation Lab. Yeah, as Seth was just mentioning, all of the work that was just presented really lays the groundwork for a pipeline of individuals who we hope can really penetrate tech talent development pipelines that we're nurturing across Oakland and the East Bay. How many of you have heard of the National Tech Hire Movement? Show of hands. Okay, great. So back in the glory days, Obama announced the National Tech Hire Movement. What's that? Back in the glory days, Obama announced the National Tech Hire Movement, which is still alive and thriving across 70 cities that are building out inclusive tech talent development pipelines and crowding in tech companies that care about hiring locally and supporting local residents and their employment pathways. And we're a coalition of different partners that are based at the Kapor Center. For those of you who don't know, the Kapor Center is based at 22nd and Broadway. Beautiful facility that houses amazing resources around. There's Kapor Capital, which is basically funding seed stage ventures that are solving for some sort of gap in tech for good. And then there's also a community engagement programmatic foundation piece that is really broad in terms of creating events that are looking at what inclusive tech looks like, also research both nationally, regionally, and in Oakland on what inclusive tech looks like, and also social impact funding for the community here in the East Bay. So I wanted to give a shout out to some of my colleagues, Meghna Megnavan and Tiffany Price, who are in the audience today on the community engagement team. And they're all involved in some really exciting initiatives that to me are just the beating heart of what inclusive economic development looks like. That's really centered around tech entrepreneurship and really crowding in a number of entrepreneurs of color in particular and other underrepresented entrepreneurs who are looking to create a tech-driven startup in Oakland. That's the Oakland Startup Network. On the second floor of the Kapor Center, we also have the Kapor Innovation Lab that is incubating tech startups as well as tech nonprofits, also solving for some sort of social impact issue in Oakland and the East Bay. And the really interesting interconnection is in this space, we're trying to develop a model in which as these companies grow, and get more support, they can start to source talent from the community and really create that intersection to jobs. That's the Kapor Center in a nutshell. I encourage you all to visit. So a lot of the work that we do is really around ecosystem facilitation and systems design for the tech talent development ecosystem. And we're really lucky in Oakland and the East Bay because we have this rich ecosystem of training partners that are a combination of nonprofit CBOs like the David E. Glover Center that really have amazing reach directly into neighborhoods and know our communities very deeply. We also have community colleges that are an amazing untapped resource that are highly overlooked by companies. We're working very closely with them. I know Berkeley City College is here in the audience today. And then also boot camps that are doing a lot of work to really skill people up to an advanced stage level. So this is just Oakland alone. I mean, this is really incredible. It's over 20 different training partners that are upskilling people in what we're really defining as emerging tech. We're finding that so often our most marginalized communities are being relegated to the fringes of the innovation economy. And so these tech pathways that are called out software engineering, DevOps, which is really the future of IT as automation comes into play, UI, UX, digital media, advanced manufacturing, and then sales and marketing. These are all more lucrative pathways that we feel are more sustainable for members of our community. So I actually wanted to take things a step back. The guy on the left here, Abel Regalado, he's one of our Tech Hire Oakland talent members. He has an incredible story, and we've mapped his journey. Basically, he's an immigrant from Mexico. His family came over. He was raised by a single mom. And basically, he's been in and out of OUSD, moving back and forth between Mexico and Oakland. And you can see his journey through our training ecosystem in Oakland. It's very convoluted because there is such a significant number of exposure training partners and sort of a gap between where those exposure training partners take or leave off and where advanced training that is affordable picks up. There's really a dire shortage of advanced training options that are affordable for our community that can get people into jobs. So we're really trying to fill those gaps, but you can see he jumped around to a number of free training programs, Hack the Hood, Mission Bit, Oakland Public Library, ended up rotating around the Peralta Community College District for quite some time. And then through Tech Hire Oakland was able to access a full scholarship to Hack Reactor, which we believe will help launch him into a software engineering career path. So I guess the point with this is a best case scenario of somebody who's highly motivated on his own to navigate our ecosystem. Tech Hire Oakland exists to really help people who need that extra support to guide them to lucrative pathways in tech. And so we're taking an ecosystem approach where we provide talent with training referrals, mentoring, job-based learning. It's often not just a case of you take one training program and then you can jump into a job right away. It can often take up to 6 months to a year. So it's the right sequence of training programs that can get you where you need to be. And so we're mapping that out with a lot of our ecosystem players. Mentoring, we provide mentoring with from people who share sort of a shared lived experience as the people we're trying to mentor. You can really speak to their needs. So we do a lot of mentoring by people of color for people of color. And then lastly, we've been developing some really exciting job-based learning opportunities, internships, which are 3 months or less, and people usually go back to school afterwards, and then apprenticeships, which is a really exciting space that's developing in tech, where people usually spend 6 or more months at a company, and then they convert into a full-time role at the end. And then we're also working with our training service providers to build their capacity, make sure that they're also referring talent holistically across the training pathways that we've defined. Again, working with employers on workshops, internships, apprenticeships, and just tracking holistically what's happening for our ecosystem in terms of outcomes and making sure that people aren't just introduced to tech, they're making it all the way into a job. So we've spent a lot of time collecting data, working with both training partners and employers. We've spent about 6 months working with the employers listed up here. both to understand where their investments lie in Oakland. We've measured about $18 million in funding going to tech talent development in Oakland from a number of these companies. And many of them are not, it's not surprising, many of them are not talking to each other about where the money is going. A lot of it is reinforcing this like very heavy exposure level training, which is very important. But then it just reinforces this gap of what happens between exposure training and advanced level that gets people into jobs. Also, in terms of the actual job-based learning component, we've very selectively chosen employer champions that we believe are walking the walk when it comes to creating actual job entry pathways for talent. So they're doing more than just a classroom visit, which is extremely helpful. They're doing more than a field trip. They're doing more than providing a social impact grant. All these things are important. They are actually creating a job entry pathway in terms of an internship or an apprenticeship. And so we have great partnerships with IDEO Collab, GitHub, LinkedIn, Twilio, Adobe, Ellie Mae. And this fall, we're hosting a series of workshops with each of those companies for our East Bay talent of color to be able to interact with key decision makers who are hiring at all these companies. And so far, it's been with pretty good results. This is a workshop we hosted with GitHub last month. This month, we're hosting a workshop with LinkedIn. And here are some of the exciting wins that we have to report just from the last couple of months. Abel, I had mentioned, has a full scholarship into Hack Reactor. Don Fountain, who was literally living on the streets previously, got a full scholarship to Coding Dojo and will probably be on his way into getting an apprenticeship soon. Debrina McEwen is an Oakland resident. These are all Oakland residents. She has a fascinating story in that she is a survival entrepreneur who lost her business. It was a family childcare business during the recession. Ended up driving a bus for Lawrence Livermore Labs. All the engineers she was driving were saying, please, like, go do something you love, put your talent to good use. So she enrolled in a number of tech training programs in Oakland, and she landed an amazing paid fellowship with the renowned IDEO Collab, which is doing some amazing design work in emerging tech around blockchain, AI, virtual reality. And then lastly, Manisha Priyadarnishi just landed a great paid apprenticeship in tech sales at GitHub. And so this is just the beginning of the cohesive talent pipeline that we're trying to create. And we're definitely looking for additional opportunities to work with other East Bay employers. If you also know any talent that would benefit from any of our training partners, we provide those referrals in. But there are so many opportunities to get engaged and to really ensure that, again, some of our most vulnerable talent is on the cutting edge and creating and building, as Olivia has pointed out, and what they're doing at the David E. Glover Center, that's what Oakland can be known for as a very radical place for, and the East Bay, a radical place for what tech inclusion can be.
Thank you, Kirsten. So I hope you can see the theme emerging. How do we make sure that our most vulnerable community members have the basic skills, they have computers, they have internet, and then now we're talking about the broader ecosystem. How are we making sure that they have opportunities to get into the pipeline, get into industry, and get all those high-paying jobs that are plentiful here in the Bay Area? So to build on that, I'd like to invite Derek Lee, who's doing very innovative work at Pilot City that's kind of cross-sector between education and industry partners. So Derek, please come share more.
I myself case. Hey, thanks for inviting me, James and Darren, for just welcoming me, and Seth for the introduction. I just want to start with this here. The work that we're doing with Pilot City is basically came back home from college, and I realized that my city was transforming itself, and that city's San Leandro. And I realized that we were thinking about economic development in terms of attracting startups and talent, but I realized that we weren't actually talking about the people who are from the city or the community. to be the ones that actually help transform it. So I realized that we weren't really tapping into the emotionally invested, connected individuals of that community to build a future of that city. So that's just kind of the base of what we found out. So there was no other place that I could find people who cared about their community besides the people from the schools. And I went to San Leandro High School, I went to Bancroft Middle School, went to McKinley Elementary School, went to Cal Poly for architecture and came back. And I realized that there's 2,700 people at the high school. And that was as many butts in seats that you can engage with a VR tool, AR tool, and tools of the future to enable them to become the ones that are starting the companies, right? And right before post-secondary, we can start actually, influencing them, right? And training them towards where they should be going or what they can do, right? And any percentage of a community has absolute leaders, right, in that community. They just need to be kind of digged up a little bit. That's what we realized. This thing's on forever. It stays on. Interesting. So these are faintly in there. About 32 interns and fellows that worked for 7 of our employers this last summer. And they all worked on projects that they continued on from classroom projects they worked on across 8 cities in Alameda County. Oakland, San Leandro, San Lorenzo, Fremont, Richmond, Mill Valley was in there actually too, and so forth. And so I want to talk about broadband and beyond. I just kind of meant the term. But what can we do beyond once we've actually fulfilled the prophecy of connecting all our individuals, right? And so I've really realized as I kind of pitch to the employer champions, what is the real purpose, right, of young people? It's because they don't know anything, right? And that they don't actually have parameters and boundaries and struggles that we probably all been through at some level. And they can kind of think outside that box, or they're going to be like, hey, what box, And so that's kind of the point of what we could tap into, right? This is Xavier and Bernie with Skyline High School and Oakland Unified. They were in Flint Christensen's computer science class, just last spring and I think fall as well. And they had DJI drones, the largest manufacturer of drones in the world, to come into their classroom and bring drones to their classroom and, hey, create, and ask them to, hey, create an autonomous drone solution. So they developed the idea of a drone intelligence platform, autonomous drone solution using drone intelligence to monitor truant students in Skyline High School. And then built to actually identify, I don't think kids would like that. And that's one of the risks of their project. But the point is they're creating that system for them, right? So this is Flint at DJI in Palo Alto learning how to use drones. This is Flint's class in Skyline. That's a drone. And they got that experience. And then what they did was pilot with Skyline High School on this idea. And that's what they did for their entrepreneurial fellowship. So you guys probably, I'm probably a newbie putting this up, but 81% of all high school students in the U.S. Have smartphones. I think we're kind of getting to that point where we actually, like the majority, right, has connected devices at some level and have connection to the outer world. What can we do beyond now, right? So that's kind of why I put this up, is what is that X factor of when we are connected, what can our students do in a way that really propels them forward beyond the idea of, the problems and struggles that we kind of see. And so what we realize is that there's, I think there's missing, this one. I want to go to this one first. Is that I realized hey, what is this kind of world, right? Were they forgotten or were they excluded? Was it a hybrid? I'm not really sure, right? I just keep asking that question. But the point is that if it was forgotten, maybe they just were realizing it now, the whole world, and we're putting a Band-Aid on it. Is that what the answer is? I'm not sure. But if they're excluded, it's justice, right? And then it's equity. But the intersection of all that, I think, is opportunity, right? And what can we do with the people who are underserved, disadvantaged, don't have access, to take them as an opportunity to build towards the future? And so I think the whole idea of this digital inclusion continuum is that once we've realized and we've see opportunity, we're providing access, right? That's first level. It's like here. Here is a computer, here's a smartphone, here's a drone, here's an AR tool, here's a 360 camera, here's a IoT kit, whatever. Here is the access. And then they have to adapt, right? They have to adapt somehow. They have to actually get digital literacy classes or get training and get the mobile bus out there, get all that stuff rolling. And then they have to apply it. Then they have to actually like use the tool, solve real problems in the world with it, right? And so this is, I think, our stance on what that may look like, right? And the question is, what is the opportunity, right? And the opportunity is this thing that we've kind of believe in, which is partnering with technology companies and employers, and then partnering with employers that are semi-desperate for talent, I say, like manufacturing, like IT, transportation, and actually building that ecosystem and digitally transforming, right? I'm going to pick it up a little bit. And so these are what we find is the actual points of transformation in these industries, is analytics, cloud computing, mobility, and so forth, social media. And so we go into classrooms and we partner and build incubators within that. We work with companies to have their companies as incubators of those talent, of those tools, of those technologies to transform them. And then we start working with cities, right, as economic development kind of function, to start transforming our internal industries and departments within those schools as well, or within those cities and city government departments. And so one thing I mentioned is, you know, the young citizen is going about their life, whether it's school, whether it's work, whether it's city, whether it's Earth, whether they go to Mars later, and with the LMS, space, whatever. And they're building their future around them as they grow in their ecosystem, right? And so what is the function? It's workforce development for the educators, it's business development for the industry, it's economic development for the governments. So these are the cross-sector tools and functions of why we should do this, right? And so, you know, beyond the digital inclusion kind of world, once we get to that point, we have outcomes, right? We have results. So they become innovators, become entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are innovators within organizations, working within companies to be an entrepreneur. So we can build this kind of system here. And so what we're finding is that there's a disconnect between industry and education. And we need to start kind of creating this kind of intersection of connectiveness and responsiveness to the transforming markets. And we're leveraging project-based learning, okay, which is a new thing kind of rolling in, as a work-based learning function. And we're using that as a tool to scale the opportunities in the classroom, going right into classrooms with employers and creating an engine there. And so we partner with companies, we partner with the career technical education teachers in high schools, computer science classrooms, engineering classrooms, digital media classrooms, and we match make them. Alameda County Office of Education, in partnership, have developed, in partnership with our employers, have designed these different areas of curriculum. So we are focused on additive manufacturing, 3D printing and so forth, subtractive manufacturing, robotics, IoT, VR, AR, and so forth. And so these two areas is kind of what we focus on, is teachers and externships, where they get professional development on the tools, and then challenges by the students for them to solve it. And they go through this sequence and continuum of transformation. This is an example of a DJI drones kind of project challenge, prototype an autonomous drone solution that solves the challenge of one of your city's municipal government departments. And Flint goes into the DJI and gets this kind of boot camp in PD on drones. And that's him again. And we designed this one-page project challenge with the employer and go into classrooms for students to engage. I just want to be sensitive to time. How much time do I have? I know it's probably done now. Oh, okay, cool. I'm not going to finish that. So we actually have the employers go in on 3 occasions to the classroom to actually engage the students to be a mentor. Hack day, review day, demo day, and in between, they work on the project with the teacher as an instructor. And this is Hack Day. Some examples. Sony is part of our program, Seed is part of our program, and so forth, through some of the experiences. This is our review day with Seed, and some of our demo days or final presentation days. And the whole point here is that we're creating a talent pool, right? These engines within our schools with employers, creating employer-driven project-based learning systems. That becomes an engine for innovation within classrooms that becomes a talent pool for the employers to hire from. And so the students submit their projects and apply for the internship and fellowship. They get quantified and qualified for their skills and how well they perform during the project. And that leads into positions for internships, entry-level jobs, and entrepreneurial fellowships with those employers to further develop the idea that they did in the classroom. And so we're creating this, this kind of next sequence, right? Digital transformation continuum of innovators, entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs is really the goal. And this is Katrina with her telepresence robot at San Lorenzo High School during the summer school, piloting with the teacher there to have students learn math and geometry and algebra using telepresence technology remotely. This is Sithika with Fremont Unified doing microfluidic bioprinting thing. I don't even know, I'm millennial. But the point is, he did these experiments for SE3D bioprinters. And then we had Haugen and Caleb Fremont as well doing, creating a autonomous drone solution that does photogrammetry, 3D scanning of potholes, cracks in roads to then offer that as an automated solution for public works departments for City of Fremont and piloted with Public Works as the sponsor. And then this is the end here, right? So no fear. So where can digital inclusion become a digital transformation tool is how we're kind of connecting these dots. And how does that create a connected citizen, right? How do we start building that connected person in that world? And creating an engine for innovation for our small to medium-sized cities, because we kind of need it more. That's it. So thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Derek. Beautiful work outlining what that continuum looks like. And it helps to have that continuum in mind when we're working with families at the start of the continuum to show them all of that's possible. If you work with the family and say, you need internet and computer because you need internet and a computer, that doesn't go very far. But if you can show all that they can do and become, it really adds power to the foundational work. So that the whole ecosystem is important, and that's the theme for today. To round us out is someone that's doing very innovative ecosystem work, poised from the city of San Leandro. Tony Batalla, please come up and join us and tell us about the smart city initiatives that you've been working on.
All right. Well, thank you, Seth. And thank you to James and Sunny for the opportunity to be here. I'm really honored and feel that it's a privilege to be here. Something about me I'll share that you won't read in my bio is I'm a Bay Area native. I'm from the East Bay. I was born in Mission District in San Francisco, and when we were young, we moved to Pittsburgh, and then here to Oakland. I went to Allendale for kindergarten, and then to San Leandro, an unincorporated San Leandro, where I grew up. And I grew up in a neighborhood where, as we got older, most of my friends, we didn't just not go to college. Most of us didn't even complete high school. I was lucky. I later got my GED, went to University of San Francisco, studied information systems, and then went to UCLA Anderson and got an MBA. And so I do feel very, very privileged to have the opportunity to now run the IT department in San Leandro. And I remember when I got hired, the city manager told me, the higher up you go, the more you can influence the outcomes, the more ability you have. And it's true. And I think about that in the work that I do and what I'm doing now. And I just feel tremendously blessed to be able to do things that make a difference. And so I'm able to I get invited to go to conferences and speak about smart cities and what we could do at the government innovation level. But this one means more than all the others. And everyone here who's working on this issue and focusing on digital inclusion and what we can do in our communities to really go all the way, make sure no one's left behind and everyone has a chance, is more important, I think, than anything else that we can do. Nothing against these other initiatives, but this one matters more. And this is the one that whenever my time is done in government, I'm going to look back on and hopefully be the most proud of, because hopefully I'll have made a difference. So this is, and everybody, give yourself an applause, because everyone here. And I think some of these stories, how inspirational they are, really touches your heart. So this is the San Leandro story. This is Smart Cities. I'm here to talk about our Smart City initiative, and I'll share that with you. It's kind of a journey to becoming a smart city. It's about planning. Ostensibly, we're talking about smart cities, but it's really about that strategic planning element. And so we went through a long process. We developed a smart city strategy and a fiber optics master plan, and that was a year-long effort to develop. But what we found through that is, what is a smart city? Before you can get there and you can do all the technology things and you can, put sensors everywhere and collect all this data and make all these great decisions, you kind of got to ask yourself, what is a smart city and what does being a smart city mean to me and my community? And that's what we did. That's the question, the central question that we're trying to answer when we do this planning process is, what does it mean? And I'm a big advocate of defining it on your own terms. There's no one definition that you can create and you can just slap on and say, now we're smart. In fact, that's kind of a pejorative term. What do you mean, everyone before you wasn't smart? Like all those great public works directors and IT directors who did all this work in the preceding decades, they weren't smart. So I don't like the term. In fact, I kind of reject it. But I do think the idea of it, the concept of a smart city, applying technology to solve modern problems, is key to what I'm going to do, key to what we're all trying to do. So you need to define it on your own terms, though. I think you can think about the technology, you can think about, all the whizzy, fun stuff that we get caught up on. But what's most important is the outcomes. Don't lose sight of the outcomes. What are the outcomes that matter? And this is kind of some guidance from the National League of Cities, who did a really great paper on it. And they came back with these 3 key things: focus on the outcomes, find ways to partner, and implement best practices. And that guides everything I try to do. And it's really simple. It's not like complicated. It's just taking a step back and saying, okay, if we follow this, this will get us to where we want to be. So we came up with a framework right here. And so this framework is going to guide our smart city planning. And at the top, you'll see regionalization. That's something very important. I want to park the idea I'll come back to in a second. Underneath that is organization. That's the city itself. That's our internal institution, right? Building that innovation capacity, working across silos, making partnerships with other departments. The IT department shouldn't be doing this alone. In fact, if we do it alone, we're going to fail. It needs to be throughout the entire city. So you need the organization, data and analysis. You're going to build a lot of data. You need to be able to analyze it, make data-driven decisions. But in those vertical banners, those are the use cases, right? That's where we're going to go out and apply, whether it's transportation or it's public safety or it's economic development. And we're going to apply smart projects to all of those. Underpinning them are your networks, your communication systems, your wireless and your fiber optics, and those need to be secure and resilient. So that's a framework for being a smart city. And that's what we've developed in San Leandro and is guiding our implementation. I'll share with you a few of our smart city initiatives. The first one's public Wi-Fi. We're very proud of our public Wi-Fi system. We now have every month 13,000 devices connecting. For a city with a population of 90,000, 13,000 devices is quite a bunch. We transmit over 2 terabytes of data a month on the system. Now, if you were paying for that on a cellular plan, even at $10 a month, I don't know what the 2 terabyte a month data plan is, but I'm pretty sure it would be pretty expensive. I mean, that's probably tens of thousands of dollars in free bandwidth that we're giving away. Is it enough? I don't think so. We're a gigabit city. We have a gigabit internet connection. We use our own fiber optic network to connect directly to a data center and get lowest cost gigabit bandwidth we can. But the city, and even the public Wi-Fi system, only uses about 1/5 of that, which means that every month, 4/5 of our bandwidth we're not using. And I could think of the analogy of farmers who grow apples, and they grow these big apples and they have the surplus, but they have to get it to where the apples are needed. They need to get it to the market. So you have this whole supply chain in the middle to distribute those apples. And sure enough, at a certain point, the supply chain doesn't make the connection and a lot of good apples go to waste. Well, that happens every month with our bandwidth. So part of my job is figuring out, what's that distribution mechanism? What is that supply chain to get the bandwidth to where it needs to be? And some of the stuff we're doing on that is working with low-income housing developers to try to get Wi-Fi throughout those buildings. I mean, the holy grail of public Wi-Fi is in-unit free Wi-Fi. We're working on that. We're not there yet, but we're making some progress. Adaptive traffic, I can make a joke about how I spent an hour in traffic this morning, and I was come here to talk about transportation systems. I have no excuse for being late. I should have known better. But adaptive traffic signaling is one of the levers we have to combat that. It just means that the traffic signals adjust in real time based on the flow in the arterial, so they can use sensors to detect the cars and then automatically change the signaling patterns to adjust to help flow rates. It's proven to be you can increase your arterial travel time 40%. Certainly looking at that. Smart streetlights, we have a whole citywide smart streetlight network through the brilliance of our Public Works Director, Debbie Pollard, who put this in place. I could talk a whole day about this, but it's a big smart city initiative. This is the Internet of Things. You may have heard of IoT, but that's just this concept of all these devices that are going to be connected to the internet. We're talking about billions of devices in the future. Think of your Nests, thermostats, your smart refrigerators, everything will have a chip in it and be able to connect to the internet. Well, now our streetlights have a chip in it too. But I really want to talk about digital inclusion. So that's one of the initiatives in our study that came out loud and clear as something that we needed to address. And I'll share with you some statistics that came from the study. So in San Leandro, these are for San Leandro, 11.2% of residents have no computer at all whatsoever. 81.5% have a desktop or laptop. Some 11% have other computer. 75%, which means correspondingly 25% are living with only a handheld computer. Those are sizable numbers, right? That illustrates and attacks to the state numbers in San Leandro. What about internet? 22.4% of residents in San Leandro do not have broadband internet at home. More than a fifth of the people in my community don't have internet, but we're a gigabit city. We're a smart city, right? We got fiber optics, public Wi-Fi, but yet 22% of people aren't connected. That's what this is about. And of course, it gets worse as you go by income. So as you get to households with less than $10,000, 70% of people don't have broadband internet at home. 70% of people less than $10,000 in San Leandro don't have broadband at home. Well, what can a city do? What's the role of a city in this? Is there even a role? It's a valid question. It's a philosophical question and also a practical question. Is there even a role for the city? I argue there is, absolutely. But I think it's fair to ask, what can a city do? And particularly, what can a city do when you're facing pension obligations, which are crowding out funding sources, and public safety funding is crowding everything out? You have no money. Your city leaders are telling you to find ways to save. And you're like, no, we need to spend more because we need to. That's how we're going to make a difference. So those are the constraints that I look at. And probably one of the most important things in my job is figuring out how to break those constraints. So I spent a lot of time coming up with another framework, right? It's very complicated on how I could do that and what the role of a city is. Although this is it. I was quite happy with how it scanned out. It looks good. But essentially, it's partnerships. Cities don't do it alone. I'm not going to figure this out on my own sitting in my office at work, and suddenly I'm going to solve the digital divide in San Leandro. I'm going to partner with Seth and James. They have a digital inclusion solution. They even call it the digital inclusion solution. It's like, well, that's what I want. Why don't I just bring them to San Leandro? And so that's what we did. We put together an agreement, and Tech Exchange will be the exclusive recipient of all of our surplus computers. And we're working with the San Leandro Public Library to build a tech fair, which, plug the date, is December 8th. It's tentative, but all signs are a go. So we'll host a tech fair, and we'll have 125 households come, get a free computer, get the wraparound services, and this will be what I think is the beginning of some very important and influential outcomes. This is how we're going to solve it. It's community partners like Comcast and Internet Essentials, and making sure that residents are aware of this and can get it, going directly to them. But it's also public Wi-Fi and distributing it. We're also working with the public library to partner with Mobile Beacon and launch a lending hotspot program. So it's all these different things, all these different arrows in the quiver. And it's using all of them to put together a cohesive program and saying, we're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it through partnerships. So the parting thoughts are, plan first, have a strategic plan, think about the strategy and apply it in your community. Partner internally, IT, Public Works, everyone's got to work together. But also think regionally. Remember I said to park that idea of regionalism. So this is really important. Transportation, right? I said, oh, well, it took me an hour to get here. I only live 12 miles away, right? That transportation doesn't care about the political boundaries of San Leandro and Oakland, or the whole Bay Area for that matter. It is a regional problem, and it takes a regional approach to solve. So does digital inclusion. It doesn't respect the boundaries that we artificially create. So that's what thinking regionally is, and our application of it is that we've created an East Bay Interagency Tech Alliance. And that is a partnership with the City of San Leandro, the City of Oakland, City of Alameda, City of Hayward, City of Berkeley, interagencies like BART, East Bay MUD, the East Bay Regional Parks District. And it's to come together and start to identify where are the opportunities? How do we connect our networks together? How do we build broadband systems that span the region and can be used for every single one of these use cases? Transportation, public safety, digital inclusion. This is very nascent. We're very early on it. But I'm hopeful that these types of partnerships, this type of alliance, will help us work together instead of being in a silo. What if my system doesn't work with your system? Shouldn't interoperability be like a fundamental tenet of city systems in a region? I think so. So we've built a charter to explain just that. These are the things we want. When you guys go out and do an RFP and you get a brand new finance system, invite us too. We might partner on that. We might get better pricing working together instead of going it alone. We end up with the same systems anyway most of the time. It's the same pool of vendors. So let's combine our buying power and let's combine our thinking power and work together. So that's what the regionalism approach is. Define SMART on your own terms, which I mentioned. Focus on outcomes that matter to your city. It's different. It's okay if your smart city plan looks different than ours, because you're building one for your community, and the challenges there may be different than mine. Don't leave your residents behind. That's the key. That's the whole thing here. And finally, build those partnerships external as well, because we can't do it alone, and we shouldn't do it alone. And that's something through this little journey that I'm on, I'm really starting to understand, is that, I can't just bust all those constraints. I can't pull all those levers by myself. People like Seth and James have it figured out. As James says, they got a better mousetrap. It's about bringing that mousetrap where you need it, and then just finding the constraints to them being in your community and then breaking those constraints so that they can come and flourish. And that's what I see the role of cities in doing this. So that's my presentation. Thanks to everyone for this opportunity. Again, this issue and this community here means more to me than the next Smart City conference I'll be at, where I'll be talking about variants of the same thing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Very good. Thanks so much, Tony. You did a beautiful job illustrating kind of the full circle of how this ecosystem is complex. There's a lot of different players, and the only way that we're going to get work done is by working in partnership and collaboration. So thank you. While we have our group of experts up on the stage here, I did want to throw out a couple of questions in our remaining time to get a bit of a conversation. Now that we've all shared what our piece of the work is, let's talk about it as a group. So there should be, I think, hot mics there on front of your table. So my first question for the group is pretty open-ended. It's, what is your next stage of work? What's your vision? And what do you need in order to get there? Any takers for responding?
I'm going to go. Can you guys hear me? Yep, okay. We have a partnership with Harvey Mudd College to develop software. So it's a Department of Education grant, and it funds what they call a clinic, which is an industry-sponsored project challenge for 9 months for 5 Harvey Mudd College students for their capstone. So we're working on software to optimize everything else we're doing.
To piggyback off of that, we're looking for job-based learning opportunities I had mentioned. So project-based learning, internships, apprenticeships. It's very challenging for us to place talent at a senior level, but if companies are more invested in upskilling talent on the job, we find that that's a pretty great equation for success. There are some subsidies available to help fund that. So I'd say especially in the East Bay, I'd mentioned a lot of big tech companies that aren't in the East Bay, but since there's an amazing legacy of small and medium-sized businesses in the East Bay, we're really interested in tapping into that entrepreneurial pool. Other partners who are focused on tech for good, very similar to what you're doing in many ways. We would just love resources in terms of mentors, job-based learning opportunities, and we can help coach you along the way.
Well, our next phase, Seth, is to sign our agreement so we can start working in San Leandro and build the tech fair. Beyond that, I think you've got a lot of really interesting ideas and there's a lot of potential to bring those services beyond just the library and what we can do there, but actually get out into the community and touch people in their home, directly with the services you provide. So I think that this is hopefully just the beginning, and that we can work together to figure out ways to expand what we can do through multiple different avenues. So the first thing is sign the agreements, and then we'll go from there.
Let's do it.
Some of the things that are coming up for us, I think a big thing is just really kind of strengthening our partnerships. I was just talking to Seth about maybe having, as a part of our basics computer technology class, and even maybe for some of our youth who go through our programs too, is being able to secure them with a computer from Tech Exchange. And so working on those partnerships, we have a really great partnership with Tech Hire, and utilizing some of the other programs that are out here in this tech ecosystem to work at the center and kind of work together to build our community. But we're also kind of expanding into more of a maker space, so bringing in and setting up a fashion technology lab, so sewing with circuits, as well as bringing in things like laser cutters and things like that, and bringing kind of the programming that we're doing with the youth and making it accessible to adults as well.
So I'd like to acknowledge Seth because he has committed for this academic year laptops to the folks who go through my classes. So once they've completed the program, they will receive a laptop. I'd also like to, as a bigger vision, to see classes for parents at OUSD schools, perhaps after school ends for the kids, the parents can have some time in the computer lab at those schools with an instructor who's teaching them the basics, because many of my students do need that, as well as maybe having that class be in partnership with their children. And the children can be working on, let's say, ST Math and telling their parents what they're doing with a program like that. Or reading, or an accelerated reading program. But I like to see some kind of work with the parents at the schools where they can do tech learning Takes money and takes a big commitment and takes finding a teacher, but I think that would be a great, I think the end result would be fantastic.
Another question I have is, all of us are doing amazing work and we need to do it faster and more of it. I'm excited by some of the partnerships that are already developing, talking from Tech Exchange's angle. There also, though, is such an amount of work that we need additional solutions and more partners and more people. So I'd be curious if the group here has any thoughts around, in this next stage of work, what's needed, and maybe try to make a connection there with what's a call to action for the group here today. What can we sink our teeth into?
Let me comment. First of all, may I just acknowledge what great presentations all of you had, and brilliance that's in the room, best practices that need to be taken to scale. So what we have to do is just draw upon what has already been said as examples and go to scale. And for the California Emerging Technology Fund, we're actually trying to institutionalize digital inclusion. I also just get jazzed and excited about Venn diagrams. So thank you all for putting Venn diagrams up there. I still love my math, and the intersection is really, very graphic. And I want to acknowledge that Gladys Papalotic, who is our VP for Northern California, and does our rural stuff in California Advanced Services Fund, is here. And also that Cynthia Mackey, who's on our board of expert advisors and who did all the social media development for Internet for All Now, is here. And I saw Ken Mintz from AT&T. I see Ken Mackey from Comcast. Now, I wanted to point that out if there's other companies in the room. The partnerships that, Tony, you talked about that have been, acknowledged or called upon for workforce training, we really need to have your involvement. Now, they know I'm the pain in the ass for all these companies. We also want very much to have your partnership in getting people signed up. There's a sense of urgency, and you've got great offers. So we need to figure out in taking to scale. And when I say take to scale, we've got over 45 local jurisdictions in the 3 counties. The seminar that could be run by Derek and Tony on smart cities, as an example, and we've got ready-made, policies that can be inserted into either an ordinance or a general plan, makes a sense. Right now, we are at the statewide level are focused on the California Transportation Commission and the Caltrans, my good friends at the Department of Transportation, to recognize how broadband is going to actually help on mobility and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We have hustled to put into the cap and trade third investment plan for the California Air Resources Board, which is like $8 billion to date and counting, how there is no way the state will meet our climate change goals without actually getting everybody included. We are about to participate in the round of rulemaking at the PUC on rules for regional consortia. How will the next 10 million get used, and particularly for the East Bay Broadband Consortium here in a urban area? All of the digital inclusion initiatives need to be recognized by the PUC as part of the eligible funding. Now, they're constrained by the legislature, so that comes right back to our work and trying to support you in getting policymakers in Sacramento to do the next stage, Internet for All Now Act of 2019 or 2020. So that's what we're going to be doing. But I think for you, come back to where can you go to scale, bring in all of the local jurisdictions, bring in all the school districts, bring in all the counties, and talk about your programs and how those get institutionalized. There is no way that all of this good work is going to happen just organically in a lifetime that matters to most of the kids that we're all talking about today.
So I think I would mention cross-sector partnerships, and I think every sector having some type of receptive item that they would be open to conversating about with another sector. And then if you get pitched on an idea, having a strategic conversation and creative conversation on how to partner rather than shutting things down, and just finding out where is the win-win and even win-win-win scenario, so that we can actually have openness when it comes to building public-private partnerships. So that's what I would say I think is the next big step in regards to these huge issues that aren't siloed in one sector or one area. They're very much so communal with all areas between government, education, industry, and community-based organizations.
From a Kapor Center lens, I think something that's really important that the center is working on is re-educating sort of the funding ecosystem on how to be a little bit more nimble in terms of what funding can look like, in terms of holistic funding, data-driven funding that addresses the ecosystem partnerships that we've all been talking about and solves for gaps in talent development pathways from start to finish. And so we're hosting a Tech Done Right pitch day in early December, I believe on the 7th, where we'll be educating funders and corporations on what funding can look like, what it looks like to have nonprofits actually pitch like startups to address data-driven gaps in our ecosystem and how they can collaborate and really incentivize behavior change based on the data that we've collected. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I mentioned in the presentation was this concept of the throwing away perfectly good apples, and that's the bandwidth that we have at the city every month that we're not utilizing. And so a big part of this for me is figuring out what's the supply chain? How do I get that bandwidth to where it's needed? So anything that can help achieve that mission is worth, fighting for. And I mean, the distribution is Wi-Fi. That's the way to get internet into people's homes. But it's getting it from City Hall to that location, that distribution. And it could be advanced wireless technologies. There's been a lot of innovation in the wireless space, so we can now send really high bandwidth, almost like an alternative to fiber, for much cheaper. We're doing that to expand our Wi-Fi into parks. But how can we get that even into residents' homes? And so that to me is the holy grail. And anything that helps me get there is what I'm going to be looking for and fighting for. And it's a big, big part of this. So.
And I would, from my perspective, double down on the partnership theme as well. And I wanted to acknowledge a group that's working hard here in Oakland called Get Connected Oakland. It's a roundtable of the mayor's office, Oakland Parks and Rec, OUSD. We have Colleen Calvano, which has done amazing work connecting thousands of students with internet at home through a project that we're collaborating on together. East Bay Broadband Consortium is at that table. Housing Association. It's all these partners that have a stake in this that come around and have this discussion. We talk strategy, we talk implementation. So I think that's another model that I personally would like to see developed throughout the region as a whole, because collective impact is the only way that we're going to get to these insurmountable numbers that we have in front of us. We are at time, and so we will soon close out. Before I pass the mic, I want to deeply acknowledge James Nixon with being behind the scenes and putting all of this together. Thank you, James. And the broader steering committee, Linda Best, we owe you a debt of gratitude. Sandy, I think I saw you somewhere, and Darian. She had to escape early. She's so important and impactful in this work too. So thank you all for the partnership. Thank you. All right. And with that, I'm going to ask Sunny to close our sermon, get us a call to action, and send us on our way with how we can all move this work forward.
Thank you, Seth. Give a round of applause again to these presenters. Amazing stories to to say, here are the best practices, let's build upon it. I pretty much shared when I commented, Seth, what is really the opportunity building on these best practices is to say, where can we take to scale? Where can we have a touchstone that brings in the majority of the region, be it all the counties, cities sitting at one table, be it all the employers sitting at one table, be it all of the human service agencies sitting at one table. In fact, that sounds like a really good agenda to me, to try to take on in that next year and have the conversation. Even, porcupines have to have a certain amount of proximity to breed. And so if you don't put people in the same room and have that conversation, that cross-fertilization, the brilliance of your work doesn't get spread as fast. The call to action is literally taking what you know, getting a majority of the leaders to adopt it. And then let me just say another pledge from our organization, because it's our mission from the California Public Utilities Commission. We support you, and let's make sure that we get adequate funding for the regional consortia to continue the work. Thank you for being here from the North Bay. It's amazing. There are 15 regional consortia. Oh, and Steve is, of course, the Central Coast. So we have in this room, at least 2 visiting consortia. And right now in the Inland Empire, they're doing their annual meeting. So there is a huge amount of leadership activity. It just needs very systematic, purposeful follow through. And talk to, right now, the next elected official or candidate for office. Make sure they make the commitment to you personally as the boss that they are going to advance digital inclusion when they get elected. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your leadership. Go be the leaders that you are, and even better than you already have been today. Thank you.